Welcome to another Learning to Read video drum lesson series. This video drum lesson covers the topic of eighth rests. In order to follow along and to benefit with this lesson, you'll need to get the beat sheet titled Eighths and Rests, and you can find that on onlinedrummer.com. To follow along with what I'm talking about during this lesson, you're going to need to bring a prior knowledge of quarter notes, eighth notes, quarter rests, and a 4/4 time signature. In other words, if you don't know what those things are or you're not comfortable with them, you should probably view another Learning to Read series first and get comfortable with them before you go on to this one. Eighth rests. Eighth rests are really easy. They're the same thing as an eighth note, except you don't play on it. So if you know how to play an eighth note, you know how to not play an eighth rest. In other words, say I have 4 eighth notes in a row, I would play them and count them like this: 1 and 2 and. That's 4 eighth notes. If I had 4 eighth rests in a row, they would sound like this: 1 and 2 and. You rest on them. You don't play. You count it the same exact way you would an eighth note, but you don't play. You rest, just like we did with the quarter rest. Given that, look at number 1 of the beat sheet titled Eighths and Rests. The first measure, the first thing you see on beat 1 are 2 eighth notes. So you have 1 and. The second thing are another 2 eighth notes, 2 and. On the third count, we see an eighth rest. The eighth rest we're going to count 3, but we're not going to play. After that, you see the eighth note by itself. And on the eighth note by itself, we play on the and. So on 3 and, instead of playing 3 and, we rest on the 3. 3 and. Do it one more time. 3 and. And then, of course, we have 4 and, which is just a 4 and. Putting the whole measure together, measure number 1 of line number 1, sounds like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Measure 2 is the same as measure 1. So again, you have an eighth rest on count 3, you play on the and then you have a 4 and. You actually have eighth notes or eighth counts for the entire measure: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you're just resting on the 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Take a look at the third measure of the first line. Count 1, you have 2 eighth notes, so you play 1 and. Count 2 is an eighth rest, and then the and of count 2 has a note, so it's 2 and. You count 2, you don't play it, and then you play the and. Count 3 has a 3 and. Count 4 has a 4 and, but 4 is an eighth rest, so 4 and. Putting that together, it sounds like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Finally, the last measure, we have 4 eighth notes and then a quarter note. So count 1, count 2 are straight eighth notes, count 3 is a quarter note, and count 4 is a quarter rest. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. After that, you repeat, and remember on the repeats, we're going to start with the left hand. So the first time through, you start with your right and use alternating sticking. That means playing back and forth: right, left, right, left, right, left. Second time through, start with the left. Let's try playing number 1 together. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. Repeat, start with the left. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. All right, number 2, the first measure is just like the third measure in number 1. So it's simply 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I want to point out that you have a whole measure of eighth counts, really: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, but you're resting on counts 2 and 4. Measure 2 of line 2, for the first 3 counts you have solid eighth notes: 1 and 2 and 3 and, with an eighth rest on 4 and then an eighth note on the and. So you rest on 4. Everything else you're playing. Let's try playing all of number 2 together. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Start with the left. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. On number 3, the first measure might look a little tricky, but it's really not. It's the same thing as a full measure of quarter notes. You'll see that we have an eighth note on 1, and then a rest on the and, an eighth note on 2, a rest on the and, eighth note on 3, rest on the and, an eighth note on 4, and a rest on the and. So basically, we're resting on all the ands and playing on the numbers, just like as if you had a quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4. You could also count that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and however you're most comfortable. Let's try playing number 3 together. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. Start with the left. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. On to number 4. The first measure in number 4, we have a quarter note on 1. We have 2 eighth notes on count 2, so we play on 2 and. Count 3 has an eighth rest, and then on the and of 3 is an eighth note. So you'll play 3 and. Count 3, play on the and then finally you have a quarter note on count 4. If you skip ahead to measure 3 of line 4, you'll see that you have that same familiar pattern that you had on line 2 and a little bit on line 1. You have your 1 and 2 as a rest, and 3 and 4 as a rest. So your eighth rests on 2 and 4. Now you need to be careful when measure 4 comes, because you also have an eighth rest on count 1 and then an eighth note on the and. So you're going to have basically 2 off beats or 2 and hits in a row. Let's give number 4 a try. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Start with the left. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. Number 5 is a bit tricky because you'll see that every single measure starts with an eighth rest. So there's a lot of offbeat hits, or a lot of hits on the and. You'll also notice that there are those X's, and remember that the X's stand for hitting the rim. Let's try playing number 5 together. Really focus on counting this one, because it can get a little difficult with all the off beats and rim hits. Really focus on counting. Ready? 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Start with the left. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And on to the last one, number 6. Number 6, there are a few things to look out for. In the first measure, you have 2 eighth notes in count 1. Count 2 is a quarter rest. So you need to be careful that you rest for all of count 2 and wait for 3 to come in with those other eighth notes. Same with 4. Rest for all of count 4 and make sure you're waiting for 1 to come in on the next measure. We also need to look out for measure number 2. Now remember, we're using alternating sticking. So the first time through the line, we're starting with that rim hit on the right hand. We have right, left, right, left. So it goes back and forth here. We have right, left on the rim. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's a neat little pattern going back and forth. But make sure you're using that alternating sticking. Let's try playing number 6 together. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. At this point, I'm going to play numbers 1 through 6 at a faster tempo. Make sure you practice them and get comfortable with the eighth rests before you attempt playing it at a quick tempo. Number 1, 2, ready, go. Number 2, 1, 2, ready, go. Number 3, 1, 2, ready, go. Number 4, 1, 2, ready, go. Number 5, 1, 2, ready, go. And finally, number 6, 1, 2, ready, go. That's it. Those are eighth rests. Eighth rests are a simple concept, but they can take a bit of time to get comfortable reading. So work through that, take your time with it, and don't forget to count. I hope that was useful to you. Keep drumming.